Now, suppose this son is in the process of making some important decision that will affect the rest of his life, but the trust level is so low and the communication process so close, mechanical and unsatisfying that he simply will not be open to your counsel. You may have the wisdom and the knowledge to help him, but because your account is so overdrawn, he will end up making his decision from a short range emotional perspective, which may well result in many negative long range consequences. You need a positive balance to communicate on these tender issues. What do you do? What would happen if you started making deposit into the relationship? Maybe the opportunity come up to do him a little kindness, to bring home a magazine or a skateboarding if that his interest, or just to walk up to him when he's working on a project and offer help. Perhaps you could invite him to go to a movie with you or take him out for some ice cream. Probably the most important deposit you could make would be just to listen without judging or preaching or reading your own autobiography into what he says. Just listen and seek to understand. Let him feel your concern for him, your acceptance of him as a person. He may not respond at first. He may even be suspicious. What's dad up to now? What technique is mom trying on me this time? But as those genuine deposits keep coming, they begin to add up. That overdrawn balance is shrinking. Remember that quick fix is a mirage. Building and repairing relationship takes time. If you become impatient with the apparent lack of response of his seeming ingratitude, you may make huge withdrawals and undo all the good you have done. After all we have done for you, the sacrifices we made, how can you be so ungrateful? We tried to be nice and you act like this. I can't believe it. It's hard not to get impatient. It takes character to be proactive, to focus on your circle of influence, to nurture growing things, and not to pull up the flowers to see how the roots are coming. But there really is no quick fix. Building and repairing relationships are long term investment. Six major deposit. Let me suggest six major deposit that build the emotional bank account. Understanding the individual, really seeking to understand another person is probably one of the most important deposit you can make, and it's the key to every other deposit. You simply don't know what constitutes a deposit to another person until you understand that individual. That might be a deposit for you going for a walk to talk things over, going out for ice cream together, working on a common project might not be perceived by someone else as a deposit at all. It might even be perceived as a withdrawal if it doesn't touch the person's deep interests or needs. One person's mission is another person's minutia. To make a deposit, what is important to another person must be as important to you as the other person is to you. You may be working on a high priority project when your 6 years old child interrupts with something that seems trivial to you, but it may be very important from his point of view. It's take habit to recognize and recommit yourself to the value of that person, then habit three to subordinate your schedule to the human priority by accepting the value he places on what he has to say. You show an understanding of him that makes a great deposit. I have a friend whose sons developed an avid interest in baseball. My friend wasn't interested in baseball at all, but one summer he took his son to see every major league team play one game. The trip took over 6 weeks and cost a great deal of money, but it became a powerful bonding experience in their relationship. My friend was asked on his return, "Do you like baseball that much?" "No," he replied, "but I like my son that much." I have another friend, a colleague professor, who had a terrible relation with his teenage son. This man's entire life was essentially academic, and he felt his son was totally wasting his life by working with the hands instead of working to develop his mind. As a result, he was almost constantly on the boy's back, and in moment of regret, he would try to make deposit that just didn't work. The boy perceived the gestures as new forms of rejection, comparison, and judgment, and they precipitated huge withdrawals. The relationship was turning sour, and it was breaking the father's heart. One day I shared with him this principle of making what is important to the other person as important to you as the other person is to you. He took it deeply to heart. He engaged his son in a project to build a miniature wall of China around their home. It was a consuming project, and they worked side by side on it for over a year and a half. Through that bonding experience, the son moved through that phase in his life and into an increased desire to develop his mind. But the real benefit was what happened to the relationship. Instead of a sore spot, it became a source of joy and strength to both father and son. Our tendency is to project out our own autobiography, what we think other people want or need. We project our intentions on the behavior of others. We interrupt that what constitutes a deposit based on our own needs and desire, either now or when we were at a similar age or a stage in life. If they don't interrupt our efforts as a deposit, our tendency is to take it as a rejection of our well intentioned effort and give up. The golden rules say to do unto others as you would have others do unto you. While on the surface that could mean to do for them what you would like to have done for you, I think the more essential meaning is to understand them deeply as individual, the way you would want to be understood, and then to treat them in terms of that understanding. As one successful parent said about raising children, treat them all the same but treating them differently, attending to the little things, the little kindness and courtesies are so important. Small discourtesies, little unkindness, little form of disrespect make large withdrawals in relation. The little things are the big things. I remember an evening I spent with two of my sons some years ago. It was an organized father and son outing, complete with gymnastic, wrestling matches, hot dogs, orange eat, and a movie. The work. In the middle of a movie scene, who was then 4 years old, fell asleep in his seat. His older brother, Stephen, who was six, stayed awake, and we watched the rest of the movie together. What it was over, I picked Scene up in my arms, carried him out to the car, and laid him in the back seat. It was very cold that night, so I took off my coat and gently arranged it over and around him. When we arrived home, I quickly carried Scene in and tucked him into bed. After Stephen put on his jammies and brushed his teeth, I lay down next to him to talk about the night out together. "How you like it, Stephen?" "Fine," he answered. "Did you have fun?" "Yes." "What did you like most?" "I don't know. The trampoline, I guess." "What was quite a thing, wasn't it? Doing those some somersault and tricks in the air like that." There wasn't much response on his part. I found myself making conversation. I wondered why Stephen wouldn't open up more. He usually did when exciting things happened. I was a little disappointed. I sensed something was wrong. He had been so quiet on the way home and getting ready for bed. Suddenly, Stephen turned over on his side facing the wall. I wondered why and lifted myself up just enough to see his eyes yelling up with tears. What's wrong, honey? What is it? He turned back, and I could sense he was feeling some embarrassment for the tears in his quivering lip and chin. Daddy, if I were cold, would you put your coat around me too? Of all the event of that special night out together, the most important was a little act of kindness, a momentary unconscious showing of love to his little brother. What's a powerful personal lesson that experience was to me that then and is even now. People are very tender, very sensitive inside. I don't believe age or experience make much difference. Inside, even within the most tough and callous exteriors, are the tender feeling and emotion of the heart.